As President of VASP, I'm really pleased to be able to introduce this series of videos where our members have presented what they believe is happening in their schools in a really positive sort of way and the sorts of things that are making a difference in government school education. I really recommend that you view these, possibly use these with your staff to talk about what you're doing in your schools and how you're going to go about continuing to improve what is happening in your school.
Hello, I'm John Halsey. I'm Professor of Rural Education and Communities at Flinders University in South Australia, and I'm delighted to share a few thoughts with you about what great schools do. Great schools focus on relationships, and great schools engage with every child in the school and with every child's family and the carers of that child. And what great schools do, they zero in on the child's developmental needs and their learning needs. They see children holistically, and that is particularly important in rural communities where often children have a limited range or can have a limited range of aspirational mentors, as well as opportunities to think beyond the local. Now, it's critically important in rural schools in particular that great schools do deeply engage with place and community, but they also connect students with the wider world. And for many in rural schools, there's a tension among three things. Am I learning for staying? Am I learning for leaving? Or am I learning for choice? And I think what it's about is great schools in rural communities in particular, but great schools anywhere, about enabling children and young adults to develop the capacity to have agency over choice, to engage with community and to engage with the wider world. Great schools value explicit teaching as well as exploratory learning. They don't leave learning to chance, and they structure curriculum as well as provide opportunities for kids to negotiate and indeed for students to negotiate beyond the school fence, because what we have to understand is that society is a very rich learning resource, as indeed other students are a learning resource for each other. And I guess fundamentally what I'm trying to say is that that great schools allow children to engage with their learning, create the space for that to occur, focus on relationships, have high expectations and work the dynamic between opportunities for explicit learning and opportunities for discovery. That's what I think great schools do. And great schools in particular have a really strong focus on valuing their staff, developing their staff, and seeing education as more than just what happens within the school.
Hi, I'm Karen Dowling. I'm from the Department of Education and Early Childhood Development in Victoria. I believe great schools are schools that understand that while schools are critical to a child's education, children learn in so many other ways, in so many other places, and at any time of the day. What great schools do is they acknowledge this and they build on it for the child's education. They understand that the children have passions and interests outside of school, and they use that at school. Take notice of what the children are passionate about, what their achievements are, and they build on that. They build links with the local community and they build links with home as well. Great schools also have a vision for what modern learning looks like, and it's not just about technology or devices, it's about connectivity, and it's about the learners themselves having a say in designing their own learning. When children are taking a role in designing their own learning, it's like Charles Leadbeater talks about, it's education with the students, by the students. It's not education that we do to them or for them. Great schools are network schools. It's where the teachers, the parents, the community, the students are all linked, networked to one another, and it's the regular behaviour for them to collaborate, communicate, to seek input, to seek feedback on what they're doing. It's all about relationships and it's about communication. Great schools ask great questions. They're open to new ideas, they're curious, and they're not afraid to have that bit of disconnect, to actually dare to question and to challenge things, and they do that in an environment of trust. It's pleasing to see more and more schools that are involving students in designing their own learning, and the teachers are highly connected, highly networked, and they're using that to build an education system that's better than it's ever been before. Have better outcomes for our students in the future.
I'm Jane Caro. I'm the co-author of The Stupid Country, How Australia is Dismantling Public Education and What Makes a Good School, as well as a public school parent and public school advocate and passionate supporter of public education. For me, I think what good schools, what great schools do, is they're like a sane place in what is an increasingly insane world. So they apply common sense. They don't lose sight of what makes sense and what really doesn't make sense. I remember talking to a most inspirational principal of a primary school in outer western New South Wales, who told me lots of her kids came from very, very chaotic backgrounds. They didn't know where they were going to sleep from one day to the next, you know, or never knew if they were going to get a meal or go to bed on a packet of twisties, you know, that kind of background. And she said that what she did was she'd get the kids as they came into her school and she'd talk to each of them one by one. She was a tall woman, she'd always get down to their height, and she'd say to them, there's nothing I can't do anything about what goes on outside of school, but I can make you a promise about what happens in school. You will always understand the reason for what has happened here. And if you don't understand the reason, if it makes no sense to you, you have an open invitation to come to me and say, I don't understand why this happened. Can you explain it to me? And I will make it my business to explain it to you. And I think that's what great schools do. They are rational places. There's an explanation for what goes on. They understand that everybody sometimes makes mistakes, is human, you know, doesn't get the top marks, all that kind of thing. And they don't react in a stupid, unrealistic, anxious, driven way. They understand that human children go through good times and bad times and need support sometimes and encouragement sometimes and discipline sometimes. But it's always from a rational and sane basis. That's what great schools do. I don't care about their academic results. I don't care about any of that nonsense. I want my children and the children of Australia to go to places where they go, well, you know, I did the wrong thing, so I accept what happened to me, or I might not like it all the time, but it makes sense to me, I understand it. They've got to remain acres of, you know, oases of sanity in an increasingly crazy world.